Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your hosts, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler, where we talk about baseball and sports performance. With topics ranging from coaching, business, and player development, our goal is to bring you a no BS approach to development in baseball and sports performance. Hope you guys enjoy. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah, did you hear that? Hey guys, welcome to the LT Brings the Heat podcast. We're your host, Sean Laird and Adam Heisler. Zoom actually started talking to us when we hopped on here, so it kind of threw us off our game here in the beginning. We started looking at each other like, what was that? It said Zoom has meeting has began, so I guess that's new. So we're going to talk about something today, guys, that is it's a topic that we've covered before multiple times and just little excerpts here and there. It's something that every single coach talks about. It's something that parents talk about and trying to teach and instill in their kids. It's something that I am instilling day to day. It's a constant growth factor. I know Adam is as well. But we're going to talk about body language and how to handle your body language and the right ways to do it, the wrong ways to do it. Because like everybody talks about body language and doing things the right way and holding yourself accountable for it. Every coach does, but they don't express what's okay and what certain emotions are okay to show in the game. Because obviously this is an emotional game in baseball and all sports are emotional. Like you're going to show emotion a lot of times. And I myself have a bad temper. So there'd be certain times where, I was wanting to show certain emotion and learning things the right way and how to handle. So I know Adam's a lot more cool and laid back than I am. So he handles things a lot different than me. So it's really good because you're going to get completely two different perspectives today from our playing days and as a coach, but also, our experience in working with players and body language and how to handle yourself when it comes to the sport, but also it's going to transfer what you do in life as well. But Adam, man, how you doing, man?
We're doing great. I'm excited about this episode. We get to talk about some stuff that college coaches are looking for, high school coaches, any coach at a higher level that you're trying to get to. This is stuff that they evaluate, and other teams are watching you. They see how you handle stuff, and they know if they're getting in your head or not just by watching your body language. So pro scouts are going to do the same thing. I once heard a story of a pro scout left the game in the middle of a game once he saw a kid act a certain way and said, I'm over it. And this was a big time prospect that was supposed to go pretty high in the draft, and he didn't end up going high in the draft, but maybe it was something that he saw and he spread the word to some other guys like, hey, it's not worth your time. He's immature. He hasn't grown up. He's probably used to having a lot of success, and that one game he didn't, and he showed his butt, and it kind of cost him. It may have cost him a career. It may have cost him a lot of money. It's just one of those things that you look back and you're like, man, that is a learning lesson I wish everybody could see. So it's some big stuff here. And like you said before, we've touched on this before, but we've never dedicated a full episode to it. So the goods, the bads, the different type of personalities, the ups, the downs. I mean, we'll just be able to kind of handle everything, what's okay, what's not okay. So I'm excited to do this one and kind of get after it, get your perspective on things, and then also get our perspective both on the coaching and the player side too. So how about you? How you doing?
Doing good, man. We're getting ready to rock and roll with bowl season next week. As I know, things with summer ball and travel ball is going to get hectic here soon, but we're excited to get rocking and rolling. Sectionals actually starts today here in Indiana. So the first round of playoff starts in Indiana. So good luck to all those LT squad guys and guys getting after it. It's going to be really cool to kind of track this and see how things go. But so we'll get straight into it, guys. So when it comes to body language, there's something I always tell guys, like how you carry yourself and your body language on the field, your body language during stressful situations, like that shows more about your personality than what you say. Because a lot of times when people talk, actually most of the time when people talk, like they're going to put on a front and say things that they might not necessarily mean, or what they think they should say, or, they're trying to put on a front. Your body language will show everything. And I think I was just talking about it a couple of weeks ago about, reading people and understanding people and body language, something I learned at a young age. And it helps me as a coach, helps me as a man, but, helps me how to handle certain things. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if your body language is bad, and this is what people need to understand, it shows mental weakness. Like if your body language is constantly woe is me, your head's tilting side to side, you're doing certain things, and we'll get into what that means and the body language and what people do. But, it could be a make or break decision with coaches and scouts, like Adam was just saying. Like we have multiple situations. University of Kentucky one time was watching, a player and saw bad body language and his mom going over there and enabling the body language, and the scout was like, dude, peace, I'm out. I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm not going to recruit this kid. The body language and how you handle yourself will show if you could be a good teammate, which therefore show what you could do in the workforce in the future. Being able to hold yourself accountable with how you carry yourself physically is going to be something that not only helps your mental toughness, but it's also going to be something that's going to carry over, like I was just mentioning, to all aspects of your life, whether it's, being a husband, being a wife, being a father, being a son. You're teaching everybody and basically how to handle themselves. And this is where I'm going to get to at the end before I pass it off to you, Adam, is, your body language on the field, to me, it shows how your parents are raising you. It shows what your parents allow you to get away with. And it shows if there's any discipline in your life, or if your parents just kind of let you kind of do whatever you want from there. And I'll give a couple of stories that I've had with kids in the past and parents to kind of explain in the future. But Adam, man, like when it comes to body language, like, what are some of the bad types of body language that you see that really drives you insane that you have to kind of correct a lot of times with players?
Yeah, I would say one thing that sticks out right away is actions in the field. Say you're a center fielder or shortstop and your pitcher's not throwing strikes and you're kind of raising your hands up in the air, you're shaking your head, or just showing some emotion that you're frustrated with the situation instead of trying to encourage the guy. Same thing when errors are made in the field and people look at each other, and instead of saying, hey, don't worry about it, we'll pick you up next time, it's a lot of head down frustration, throwing the hands in the air, drawing attention to yourself that doesn't need to be drawn to you, because that makes you look like an idiot out there. If you're out there acting like a little 10-year-old, throwing your hands up in the air going, man, what's going on? And I've seen that before, and it does get frustrating. It happens at youth levels, and it happens even at the high school level. I've seen some college guys kind of get away with it, and it's frustrating because it is embarrassing to that player. Now, their aspect, they might, well, coach, I just care about it. And we want you to care, but you can't show that emotion. That is not showing that you care. That's showing you're kind of like an entitled little brat is what it's showing. So as opposed to doing that, let's encourage the guy. If you want to get in the dugout and have some conversation with him, I think a lot of guys need to understand that if you're going to show some type of emotion, try to wait until you get into the dugout and have some emotion there, where not everybody on the field can see you, from the stands to the other team, to the umpire, to scouts. Get in the dugout, try to get in the corner. Now, I know some fences now are clear fences so they can see through everywhere at the dugout, but just try to get your frustration out in different ways. And all right, now let's take it on the offensive side. Of hitter strikes out on a bad call by the umpire. Don't turn around, show the umpire up, slam your bat, draw the line, throw your helmet. None of that stuff is acceptable. I mean, it just, like I said, it goes back to making you look like you think that you're better than you are, number one, but then also you don't know how to handle failure. Hey, they're going to make bad calls. It's just part of it. You've got to, hey, put your head down, walk back to the dugout, breathe a little bit, go in the corner if you have to. If you need to scream in your helmet, that's fine. Like, there's other ways to get around doing it as opposed to showing emotion in front of the whole entire complex that's out there. So when you get bad calls, or when you have strikeouts that happen, or you pop up with the bases loaded, you slam your bat down. Like, yes, me and Sean want you to show that you're not happy, but we don't want you to show it as the borderline of, all right, we want you to care, but instead of throwing your bat down, run as hard as you can. Take out your frustration doing that. I know it sounds stupid, but you just busting your butt will take out some frustration. You grab your stuff and you go out there and play defense. So we're not saying strike out, run back to the dugout, give the guy a high five and like smile, and like, no, that's not okay either. It's that happy medium of, we want you to care, number one, but we don't want you to go overboard with acting like a little child out there throwing a temper tantrum. That is not acceptable, and that is not okay. And that's just two examples right there, both on the offensive side of the ball and the defense. Now I'll get to pitching. Pitchers, when you're not getting calls, don't look at the umpire and throw your hands up in the air. I hate watching that. It drives me nuts. Like, hey, bring your catcher out, talk to him, see if he can help you out. If your coach is there, me or Sean will say something to the umpire if it's getting out of control. Don't you show emotion. Let the coaches do that for you. That's what we're there for, is to kind of have our players back. So, guys, you just play the game. Let us handle that side of things with umpires, and everything else would be a lot more easier. Once again, is we're not expecting you to go up there, you're throwing strikes that he's calling balls and not care at all, but there's certain ways that you can go about doing this. And even if it's, all right, I'm going to step off the mound, gain my composure, take a deep breath, like that's showing you care for us instead of just getting back up there and continue to do the same thing over and over. But the last thing you get into is just the throw the hands up, the throw the gloves, the take the hat off, the yelling at other teammates. That's the stuff that just drives me insane. And it shows, like you said, eventually how you were raised and how you're going to be later on in life when you have to go to work somewhere too. Is it's all about the team, and we talk about that all the time. And body language is a big part of team and all being together. And if you have a successful team, that stuff doesn't happen. Look at all the state championship teams, college World Series teams. Like, they don't get on to players like that in front of everybody. If they do, it's in a dugout by themselves, having one-on-one conversation, but it's not trying to embarrass another teammate or to embarrass the umpire.
Yeah, that's something that is a couple of players I saw in the MLB, and I can't even remember the story, so I'm not even going to butcher the story, but there was some kind of argument, probably a fight inside of a dugout. And then reporters and media and people were asking about it, and they were like, oh, we saw a squirrel in the hallway. I don't know. Did you hear about that? You know the story I'm talking about?
Yeah, I remember that.
So, but like those two players obviously got into it. Let's get real here. But they handled their business like men, and they handled it in-house. So let me start with this. And like, Adam, you hit on a bunch of great points right there, is that your teammates are going to make errors. Your teammates are going to make mistakes. As a pitcher, you're going to have people make errors behind you. You know, as position guys, you might score 15 runs and the pitchers might give up 16, right? Like it's a nature of the beast. Like, Adam and I know both sides of that. I missed a fly ball in Ole Miss in a tight game when I was either a freshman or sophomore. I brought it up before. I should have got the fly ball, but I missed it. And I remember the pitcher was super pissed off at me. But at the same time, it is what it is. I made a mistake. I owned up to it. I screwed up. I mean, that same pitcher had games where he'd give up 9-10 runs. Like, it's the nature of the beast in the game. How we talk to each other and how we treat each other as teammates, that's going to be the big thing. So Adam was talking about, for those that are listening, like, showing emotion is fine. It's the negative emotion that where you're acting like a 5-6-year-old that he's talking about. That's what's bad. Now, what does that mean? Like, so every time, like, as a hitter, this is the thing that happens most in summer travel baseball is you get bad umpires. We all know there's going to be a lot of bad umpires, especially with the umpire shortages there are now. You're going to get guys that have never done the game before, never umpired a game before. They're going to struggle, especially when it comes to consistency. So as a player, and I always talk to some of my players, I had a couple of kids that used to, catchers specifically, think they know the zone and they get into it with umpires. If an umpire makes a bad call, yeah, I get it. You look down third baseline, you're upset, but looking at the umpire bitching and complaining and moaning and putting your shoulders down and moving your head back and forth, that's not the way to handle yourself. It's not the way to carry yourself. That umpire is not going to, like, we're all human. Umpires are human too. They're not going to give you close calls when you act like that toward them. And I always tell my guys, like, hey, if you're going to ask a question to the umpire, like, hey, is that as far out as you're going to go? Hey, was that on the outside low and outside corner? You're looking down at the ground, looking at the plate. You're not looking at them face to face. You don't want people in the crowd to know that you're having a conversation. You're asking a question for them. And every time you talk to them, you're being respectful about it. You're not going there. You're not saying it's always yes, sir, or sir. Sir, is that as far as you're going to go outside? That's how I have my players talk to them. And that's only asking them where the zone is. That's it. They're not asking them. I'm not telling them that you can talk about anything else. I'm not telling them it's a ball or it's a strike. That's my decision. That's how I am. I'll argue and I'll talk about that stuff. But kids will show bad body language in that batter's box, and they'll look down at me and I go, hey, so what? You got two more. So what? It is what it is. Like, you're not going to get a fair hand in life. You're not going to get a fair hand when it comes to balls and strikes of the game. We all have had those situations where bad things have happened. So be respectful to the umpire at all times. Parents, as you are listening, yes, part of the game being a fan, getting at the umpire and stuff, give them a hard time. I've had certain instances where, parents are calling the umpire names or screaming and yelling. That stuff's completely uncalled for. And that this is a little bit more of a verbal part instead of the body language part. But as a player, like, if you're looking in the crowd and you see your mom or dad being super emotional or their body language is really bad and they're flaring their head around, that is how that kid is going to respond. He's going to think that that's okay to act like that in the game. And that's not the case. Like, I make it, granted, my daughter's in T-ball and we're going to have all of our kids playing. I'm not going to have bad body language in the crowd. I'm going to do my absolute best to control my emotions and make sure I do that, because I don't want my daughter and my kids to see me act in a certain way and think that that's okay. Now, granted, it's T-ball right now, so my biggest worry is making sure she's focusing on the ball and watching the ball right now. So let's carry over to the field, like Adam was saying. Like the classic examples is the hitter arguing balls and strikes and being upset about balls and strikes. Shoulders down, shoulders slumped over. head tilted over. Not okay. Ignore it, let it go, have a conversation about it. The guys on the field, pitchers, a couple of my elite pitchers, guys make errors behind them, and it's high school baseball. There are going to be a lot of errors in high school baseball. Not everybody's playing on turf in a perfect world. Like there's going to be guys that don't play the game year round. Like we talked about before, there's multi-sport athletes that show up their first ground ball is probably the day before the first game. So when people make errors behind you, yeah, you get pissed off. Yeah, you're upset. But my dad used to always say this all the time to me, and hopefully this will help people that are listening right now. And not to say that I was perfect at it by any means. And I'll preface with this, like as a player myself, like I never threw my helmet or threw my bat. Did I smack my hand or smack my helmet as I was running into the dugout at times? Hell yeah, I did. And I'll talk about certain body language. I don't have a player getting upset. Like if a pitcher misses a call or misses a pitch and he smacks his mitt, that stuff doesn't bother me. A pitcher, yelling and getting pumped up and flexing in the game, that doesn't bother me. If a pitcher flexes like that, whatever, right? As long as the hitter's able to showcase what he needs to do, like that's part of the game. That's going back and forth. I don't have a problem with that kind of emotion. The emotion that I have, that the most thing that's more annoying is a kid, as a pitcher, and this is position player too, tilting the head and throwing the hands up in the air like Adam was just saying, and looking side to side and just like, oh man, I can't do this all by myself. That type of attitude. That is completely inexcusable. And back to what my dad did. And my dad was a boxer and football player. He never even played baseball. And he would always say this all the time. Like, I've been in the gym with some of the baddest fighters in the planet. Right. He was in there with a light heavyweight champion of the world one time. And, the guy was showing him some stuff in the ring. And those boxers are more humble than baseball players. He goes, the biggest egos I've ever been around my life are baseball players. And I would agree with that 100%. And there's a lot of reasons. I have a lot of theories behind that. But like with fighters, those guys know they can be humbled at any moment. They are the most cocky, arrogant, confident people in the world, but at the same time, the most humble people in the world. And like somebody walks into a gym, they're here to help people. They're like, hey, let's grow you, man. They understand that there's more behind it. Not to say that there aren't certain guys that showcase and act a certain way incorrectly when it comes to the fight game. But in baseball, and I was just talking to Adam about this beforehand, like in the baseball world, for some reason, like I'm a big believer when I see my friends eating at the table, when I see my friends being successful at the table, I'm happy for them. I'm excited for them. I want to see that stuff happen. In the baseball world, for some reason, like when it comes to hitting instructors and coaches, like everybody sees this as a competition. And while granted, like everything is a competition in life, but just because somebody's doing something successful doesn't mean that you can't do something successful and they can't, have their cake and eat it too type mentality. So saying this, like the body language can be bad for guys that are performing bad behind them as pitchers, but also body language. I've seen guys act terrible when it comes to seeing somebody doing really well on the team that they don't like. And they're in the dugout and they're pouting like a little baby. Thinking, well, that should be me out there. I should be doing this one time, blah, 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 blah. And I'm getting a long way to make my point here. But then I had a dad 2 years ago. We had a shortstop going to college. It was 3 years ago. It was years ago. So we had this kid who made, I'm not kidding, probably 10 ESPN top 10 highlight plays at shortstop in one game. It was phenomenal to watch. It was so cool to see. After the game, everybody's pumped. Everybody's happy. We won the game big. We look over and one of the other parents of a kid who can play shortstop, but doesn't necessarily play shortstop every day, you would think that like somebody told him he has cancer. That's how pissed off this guy was and upset and sad he was. And the body language was just terrible. So all I did was look at him and I saw him looking like pissed off. I knew exactly what it was, but I didn't say anything. And then later on, I found out he said something to one of my assistant coaches that, well, it's kind of hard to get recruited and my son can't play shortstop is literally the words that came out of his mouth. And he knew better than to say that to me, obviously. That's why he said it to the assistant coach. But before I even knew what he was upset about, I could tell that something was wrong and he was pissed off. And I had an idea just by some of his body language. So back to what my dad was instilling in me. My dad would always look at me and say, Sean, you have to have a stone face in everything that you do. You have to have this look where people don't know if you're pissed off, people don't know if you're sad, people don't know if you're happy. You can't be a roller coaster. And my dad never played baseball, and that couldn't have been truer words for a baseball player. You can't get too high, you can't get too low. The game's always going to humble you, period. We talk about it all the time. And no matter the situation, no matter what I was going through, every single game, the first thing that my dad would talk to me about was how I carried myself, how I acted. And the most of the time he talked to me about this in Little League, but he would say, stone face, stone face, stone face, stone face. You don't want people to know what you're thinking, how you feel, whatever. Now, how you carry yourself in violence, some of that stuff, like, the cockiness, the swagger, whatever, that's hard to hide. And the facial expressions, that shows a lot of everything. Because if you control your facial expressions, you control your face and have that stone face look, that tilt to the head, those throwing those hands up in the air, that stuff's not going to happen. And I think about that all the time. He has no idea that I still think about that to this day. I don't know if I remember talking to him about it. But that was some of the best advice he ever gave me. And I'm just assuming, I'm guessing here, I've never asked him, but it's probably back to his boxing days, like showing this, intimidating stone face, no emotion face. Like that's the type of attitude you got to have. And honestly, for the advice of listeners right here, that's my advice to you guys. In any situation that you're in, you have to have that stone look to your face where people don't know if you're pissed or people don't know. And as a coach, like I want to be able, like, man, is this kid like the best kids to coach in the world are the ones that can strike out 3 times a game, and you wouldn't know the difference between if he hit 3 home runs or if he struck out 3 times. Parents are the same way. Like, there's this kid years ago hit well over 300, but he struck out a lot. And I'd see his dad at the end of the game, like, dude, Sean, what's up, man? That was a good game. Like, he was always in such a good mood. And it's not a coincidence that his kid acted the same way. He was always it was like he was happy to be there. He's like, dude, this is awesome, man. I'm enjoying this. So, and in all honesty, like if we ended the podcast right here, that would be the only thing that I would want to get out of what I'm trying to say right here that helped me so much. And that I've seen, situations with kids, because that stone face thing that my dad told me when I was 8, 9 years old and kept telling me as I was growing up, I'm a 35-year-old man. I still think about that today. I tell my athletes to this today.
Yeah, and that stone face thing, and not only for players, but also for coaches too. Because if our players see the way we're reacting, if we're throwing a temper tantrum, we're raising our hands, doing that stuff, they're going to think it's okay to do that. Also, if you look like over there and you're just not having a good time, then it's going to be like, man, this coach is so boring, he sucks. So it's having that stone face of showing excitement at the right times, but also not acting like the temper tantrum child that we had mentioned. And so I love that you brought up the 0 for 3 or 3 for 3. It's be that guy that we don't know how you just did because you're the same every single day, because you'll play baseball as long as you want to, because coaches are going to love writing your name in the lineup. They're not going to have to worry about, is he going to show up there or is he not? Oh, I know I'm going to get the same Sean Laird no matter what. I don't know if he's going to go 0 for 3 or 3 for 3, but I know he's going to compete and he's not going to show emotion and he's going to have the stone face throughout. And I can go to war with that, a guy like that, any day of the week. So I'm glad you pointed that out. That's just some advice because there are times, now let's get to the higher section of, I don't want to know that you're having a great day because you're 4 for 4 and all of a sudden you're the best teammate in the world. But when you're 0 for 4, you want to go sit in the dugout and not talk to anybody. Like, that stuff drives me almost just as crazy as the guys that throw temper tantrums on the field, because now I see what you're all about. When you have good success, you're loving the game of baseball. As soon as you don't, I hate this game. Like, this game sucks. You make excuses about it. So that is a guy you do not want to be. We call them big league guys. They try to, when everything's going great, man, they're the best teammate in the world, high-fiving, jumping up and down, trying to give advice to other players. But as soon as they're having some failure, they don't want to listen to anybody. They don't want to talk to anybody. They tell people to stay away from them. Like, that's the guy that you don't want to coach either. So there's how to handle when you do have success in this game. For myself, when I was in freshman and junior college, my coach brought me to the side and basically told me I needed to show more emotion. And it was because he said, scouts watch you play and they don't know if you like the game or not. They think maybe you just play because you're good at it. And I kind of thought about it like, wait, what? Like, that's just my personality. And he goes, I know that's your personality, but just show, like, when you slide into third on a triple, show some emotion that you're pumped up. Show some attitude, some grit when you're out there stealing bases. Like, when you make a dive and play, like, show that kind of emotion where you're pumped up and excited about it. And it did help me take my game up a notch of, okay, maybe my personality off the field is this, more cool, calm, collective. But then on the field, I can raise it up a little bit and show that I do enjoy the game of baseball. Because we're not trying to say don't enjoy it. Like when Sean mentioned stone face, is my body can still show great emotion, but with my facial expressions, let's just not get too high, get too low. And that way that scout knows, okay, he's playing the game hard, he's playing it right, and he's under control of his temper, and he's under control of what happens. And that's the biggest thing, is control what you can control. We talk about it all the time. You can control your body language. You can't control if you get 3 hits in a game. You can control being a good teammate. You can't control if you struck out 8 on the mound or if you walked 8 on the mound. You don't control any of that stuff. So you've got to really challenge yourself to – I know it's boring. I know people are probably like, man, this is the same stuff my coach talks to me about all the time. But we always talk about it because it is the most important part. Are you a good person? Is a coach want to coach you? Do players want to play with you? Because I've had players come up to me before like, Coach, man, I can't stand this kid. I don't care how good he is. Like, I just can't stand being around him because when everything's great, he tries to act like this. When everything's not, he acts like this. And those are the ones, hey, trust me, I get it. So we're going to do whatever we can to get him to go somewhere else. And a lot of the times they go somewhere else because they feel entitled to go somewhere else. Or it's like, oh, well, that team, they weren't up to my caliber, so I need to go somewhere else. When really the ones that won were us on that side of things versus the other way around. So the last thing we want to do as coaches is coach players that are like this. And from a playing standpoint, I know Sean is going to mention he's a little bit more into it. He will smack himself on the helmet. He'll show a fist bump. Like, he'll do things. That's his personality right there. And he is the same way off the field, on the field. But it's never did I see him show frustration from a standpoint of trying to embarrass another person, whether it's the umpire, the coach, or the teammate. It was always in a good, positive thing. And that's what we're trying to say is be who you are, but then also kind of know the ups and downs and trying to stay that cool of not too high, not too low.
Yeah, and those are all super valid points and super important things for people to understand. And that's the thing is like the good body language, what Adam is talking about, like when good things happen in the game, as a coach, there's nothing better than having teams with energy. As a player, there's nothing better than having kids to feed off with energy. Like when great things happen in the game, show that high emotion, show that excitedness. It's when the bad things that happen, right? That's where the stone face kicks in. Yes, you can get upset. And so let's talk about when guys do fail, like what is okay. So as a hitter, I don't have a problem as a coach. If I'm watching a kid, he strikes out, if he's beating the hell out of himself in the head, like he's trying to knock himself out, that's one thing. Like when I was talking earlier about smacking myself in the helmet, like I would smack myself in the helmet. For those that are listening and didn't see what I did, I hit the side of my head like, oh man, that was dumb. I should have swung at that pitch or whatever. And I'll smack my hands real loud together. Like, man, I shouldn't have done that. Throwing the bat, throwing your helmet, screaming at another player or something like that. That's not okay, man. That's not how you handle yourself. And there's been situations before in the past where did I want to punch a wall? Heck yeah, I wanted to punch a wall. There was one time in my life that I ever punched a wall. And I was in 8th grade, and it wasn't even baseball, it was basketball. I just got hammered in a foul, and I punched the wall right behind the basketball goal and hurt my hand. And I was like, man, my freaking hand hurts. And my dad, of course, like, hey, that's not going to fly, man. We ain't doing that stuff. So I think it was the 7th grade. So I was like 12 or 13 years old. And he's like, hey, that's not how we're going to handle ourselves. And I was in a different sport. And at that point in time, I handled myself better on the baseball field and basketball. And it's like how you handle yourself in all sports, it's going to apply to everything. And that's what I was talking about, the carry over to all things in life. And, running track, I showed emotion. I was super pumped. I learned, what was that proper emotion and what was that bad emotion, kind of naturally, just by instinct at that young age. And so back to baseball, like when I see guys strike out, I don't expect you to be happy. When I see you not playing, I don't expect you to be happy. I expect you to be pissed off. Like that's part of it. That's where the stone face kicks in. But part of that body language is like, once you get done at the plate and you strike out, it's not about me anymore. It's about, hey, it's team time now, right? So I've got to be a good teammate. If I'm DHing, maybe I'm warming up the guy down left field line. Part of that body language carries over to your duties as a player. Like if you're supposed to warm up the guy in left field as a DH and you're pounding and the dugout up, woe was me for striking out, and you're not doing your job, that's horrible body language. You're supposed to run out there and be out there before the guy that's playing left field is. Or maybe this is another thing, and this is something I consider body language. But if you're not picking your teammates up in the game and you're just running about that to me, that's a selfish person. That you're showing your body language showing a selfish person, that you're not looking out for your teammates. 1 or 2 times you forget, but if this is happening constantly throughout the summer, your mindset is about me. It's not about we. And that's where the transition goes. And we'll talk about the me versus we in games in the future and kind of go in depth in that. But, it's okay to show that emotion of frustration. It's not okay, like Adam's saying, to be condescending toward players, treating other players disrespectfully from the body language of the examples I'm giving right there. It's not okay to punch walls, throw bats around. And the first thing people will say is go, well, hey, MLB guys do it all the time. Here's the thing I would say with that. There's 3 things. I'm not going to BS you and tell you that I was never pissed off at certain things. And I actually just gave an example. I actually just lied a second ago. I didn't realize this. Me and Adam were talking about this before, and I'm going to be full up front and honest right here. I was taken out of a game in college. I had a home run and a double in my first 2 ABs. I struck out my 3rd AB. My 4th AB, I was taken out in college as a junior in college. So my coach wanted to bunt, play a small game. No idea why. I didn't like that. We had a roof on the top of our dugout that was, plywood, whatever. I double punched the top of the roof in the dugout because I was super pissed off. Was it the right thing to do? Probably not. Do I regret it? No, because I wanted to show my frustration in another form and fashion without disrespecting my coach. Now, let's start from the right. Let's start from the top here. Should I have punched the ceiling? No, I shouldn't have punched the ceiling. For me, as 21-year-old man, that was the emotion that I wanted to show instead of yelling at my coach or getting pissed off and acting like a baby. Because I would never do that. I would never do the latter. I would never yell at my coach or disrespect him in that aspect of things. I hit that. I was out of frustration. Coach, after the AB for the guy that pinched hit for me, it didn't work out. He comes over and goes, Sean, do you have a problem with my decision? And all I said was, yes, sir. I think that was the wrong decision, but I respect your decision. It is what it is. So I handled that part right. But again, I'm being honest, like I messed up. I showed emotion in that situation. Now let's talk about grown men in the MLB. I can't sit here and say that it's, when you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars, those guys in the MLB, if you guys that are listening and you're playing professional baseball one day, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. Like, let's be honest here. Like, you're in the show, you're at the mecca of the sport, the top of the game. Show emotion, do whatever you want to do. There's different rules to follow, and there's different ways that those guys go about things. They're also competing at the highest level of competition possible. So saying that, there's going to be a lot more emotion involved in some 13-year-old travel baseball game playing in the middle of nowhere and how to handle yourself. Those guys have already proven their worth to play at the level that they're at. Everybody else, like we were talking about before, how you carry yourself and how you handle yourself as you are going up in the world, you are showing yourself that you are worthy of playing at that next level. You're showing yourself that if you're mentally tough to play at that next level. Those other guys have already gone through the grueling minor leagues. They've already gone through the toughness of all the long bus rides. They've shown what they can do at a young age and going through, high school up through college. How you handle yourself, though the scouts are watching, they're trying to sit there and look at you and go, is this kid throwing a fit because he's a baby and he can't handle failure? Because if we're on a 12-hour bus ride and we're going game to game, we're playing multiple games every single day in the minor leagues. If this kid is in this downward spiral all the time, he's not going to last 2 weeks in the minor leagues. And that's where I'm getting at here is those guys in the MLB, they've already gone through and showed their toughness and showed that they can handle themselves emotionally and body language wise in order to still be successful. You guys haven't. And part of that is learning how to handle yourself and how to carry yourself. Because at the end of the day, like when you see things on video and see things on TV, there might be 1 or 2 guys that get pissed off in the dugout, throw their mitt or whatever, 1 or 2 times. If you ask them, they're like, hey, yeah, man, I wanted to show emotion. Do I regret it? Yes, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I needed to do that. And this is something where I'm different than most people. And because of how I am, and this is what I would do if I was a head coach for an organization, or I was talking about this with Adam the other day, or for a college or whatever, I would have a speed bag in the dugout. So if people were pissed off, you run inside, it's like, hey man, we're going to show a healthy way to show emotion. We're going to punch the speed bag. Boom. And so you punch the speed bag, you get a freebie, everybody goes about their day. And honestly, like I think it would be really cool, and I think it would be something that people would enjoy. And it's like, hey, you know what? You get a free pass right here. Hit that damn punching bag as hard as you can. It's not like, for those that know, a speed bag is not gonna. It couldn't break a 2-year-old's hand from punching it. It's not gonna break anything. It's just soft. And that's what I would do to kind of create my camaraderie and my atmosphere. Like, hey, you just struck out. You pissed off. You got your speed bag. Once you do that, it's over. Boom, it's done. And that's one thing I think people overlook is once something bad happens, if you make a mistake body language wise, if you need to apologize for it, you apologize for it. You say you're sorry, whatever, man up to it. Use the example that I did in a game. I'm trying to be real with the people that are listening. So I'm not just sitting here. I don't like idealists. I'm not trying to be an idealist. I'm trying to be a realist in the situation. You're going to fail, but learn from that failure and don't repeat that mistake twice.
Yeah, and I will say, even when Sean's situation, like when he punched the dugout, it wasn't a scene. Like it wasn't a selfish look at me. Like I don't even remember that he did it. So I don't want people to think that he caused a big ruckus in the dugout by doing that. No, he took out his frustration and it happened. And then he talked to the coach afterwards and it was all good to go. So it wasn't like a big scene. 2 things that drive me nuts after strikeouts is screaming profanity, like loud and letting everybody see you. Just drives me insane, especially when the parents and kids, there's stuff around. Like, I don't care if you're at the minor league level, college, wherever you're at. Like we said, big leaguers, they can do what they want pretty much. But anywhere else below that, there is somebody watching you and they see how you act. And it's not okay, whether it's a young kid that wants to be you one day or if it's a parent or your grandma's there, whatever. The screaming the profanity thing drives me insane. And that's the quickest way to kind of get on my bad list. Like, you want to get in the dugout and scream in your helmet, do whatever you got to do, or you want to scream in your glove, that's fine. But don't scream it loud enough where anybody can just flat out hear you. And then the second thing is you strike out, you go out in between innings and you throw it 100 across the infield and spike it at the first baseman, or you throw it in the dugout over because you're pissed off, or so to speak. If I'm a scout and I see that, it just shows that you're a baby. Like, you're mad and you're trying to take out your frustration by slinging it at the first baseman. It's not his fault that you just struck out or had a bad at bat or the umpire screwed you. Same thing goes if you just sling it in the dugout like you don't care. Like, that's not a cool look at all. So if you are one of these things that it's happened to you before, I highly suggest you get that under control before you find yourself getting off scouts' radar as well as college coaches' radar, because they're not going to want to deal with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to like me hitting the dugout, like Adam was saying, like I didn't have one teammate come up to me and say anything. And when Kit, our head coach, came up and talked to me, he wasn't even really pissed off. He was just kind of talking in like, man, like, I don't like how that whole situation unfolded type conversation. And that was one of the more real conversations I ever had with him.
Yep.
And that's the one thing. So those that are listening, like, well, you're trying to tell me to control your body language, and you just admitted to hitting the wall when you were 13 years old, and then hitting the ceiling when you were 21 years old. Like I just said, you learn from mistakes, but at the same time, like, everybody knew I wasn't going to act like that the rest of the day. I wasn't going to bitch and moan. And the kid that actually didn't end up getting the sack butt down, I went over to him, pat him on the butt, go, hey man, don't worry about it, dude. We're going to win this game. I made it a purpose that I didn't want him to think that, like, screw this dude. I didn't want him to go. And while the at-bat was going on, I was right there watching. After I had hit that, I walked back to the top step. I was watching. So I did not let myself become a shitty teammate when that happened. Did I show that form of frustration? Yes, I did. So for those that are listening and understanding like this, like, most people, when we're talking about body language, this is something that is a repetitive thing. This is something that is done over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And we have to constantly get on guys about this. Like I said before, certain guys show emotion and get mad. Teammates yelling at each other. I'll let them yell for a second. If it's like 3 or 4 seconds and it's still going, then I step in. But when you're performing a game, it's a high level competition and you're trying to beat the other team. You're trying to compete for a scholarship. You're trying to be the best you could be. There are a lot of emotions involved.
Yep.
I got in a screaming match one time with our hitting coach. And like I said before, this is in college. He said something. I said something back. After we got into it for whatever, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, what it was over. It's done. It is what it is. And that's something that people that have never performed at the highest levels of possible, or people that have never tried to compete against the highest level of competition possible, they're never going to understand that. Like somebody that just goes to a 9 to 5, sits around and watches movies all the time, they don't have that competitive bug. We understand that. And if you get into it with somebody, you don't take things personal, and you do not show, and like Adam is saying, and Adam's made the best point, and I think this podcast needs to be made, is that you don't show up other people. You don't disrespect other people, because how you treat other people is going to be exactly how people view you. And that's where the body language comes into effect. It's not only representing who you are, how you carry yourself, how your family is teaching and raising you, but it's also how you treat other people. And at the end of the day, like, if we want to be better teammates, we want to have a great team, we want to win state championships, whatever, we've got to be the best teammate possible in this game.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that we touched on it before, but if a college coach messages one of us about a player, they already like the player athletically, hitting, running, throwing. They're literally asking what type of person this kid is. So if they bring up an incident, hey Sean, I saw your shortstop, I really like him, but last week he showed some frustration. Does he normally act like this? And Sean will be able to answer, no, he was in the heat of the moment and he had a thing. He came up actually afterwards and apologized, or either, yes, this is what happens when things don't go his way. And that's what they're going to come to us for, is asking, what is the person like? And what is the player like? What is the team like? What is that guy all about versus what do you think he hits? Because they already like you. Or how well do you think he runs? Or how well do you think he pitches? They want to know the ins and out of what truly are you on a day-to-day basis when things are both going good and when they're going bad.
Yeah. And that's a really great point right there. Cause that's at the end of the day, like, when college, like, you could make or break you. If somebody's like, if there's an Adam Heisler and a Sean Laird and they're at the same level and this college scout is watching these two guys play, if they're pretty much even with everything, that college coach is going to pick the character and how they carry themselves, the body language every single time. Maybe even if the one guy is a little bit below him and he sees a little bit more potential, he'll pick that guy with character, how he carries himself, because those are intangibles that you cannot, like, you can coach the game. You can make guys bigger, stronger, faster, help increase velocity, but you can't, the mental makeup, you can't create. They're already at 18, 19 years old. You are who you are. You might change a little bit here and there, and you might grow as a person, but that's going to take a long time for that to happen. In the 3-4 years that a college coach is going to get you, those are the decisions that they're making. So guys that are listening to this, like, we'll end it with this is, if you want to play at the highest level possible, you cannot leave any parts of your game as weak links. You're only going to be as strong as your weak link. And when it comes to body language, there are a lot of guys that have that as a weak link. And I'll kind of end with this is I've coached 5 first-round draft picks in the Bulls over the last 10, 11 years. Every single first-round draft pick, they had phenomenal body language and they were a great teammate.
Yep.
And the guys that, like Adam was talking about, that are the 3-for-3 home run teammates, that everything is great when that's going on, and 0-for-3, they're the worst teammate in the world. The guys that are overconfident in themselves and have bad body language, those guys, that's not saying that they're bad players. They're definitely good players. But to me, when you're at that elite status, if you want to be the elite status, there's a different way that those guys carry themselves. There's a different way. Like, they're confident in their abilities. They work their butts off. There's a reason why they got drafted first round. You're not going to see a guy, unless he's throwing 100, like, let's face it here, unless he's throwing 100 miles an hour, 18 years old, you're not going to see a first rounder that guys are going to take a risk on, or elite pitcher, elite hitter, whatever, if they can't control, the downward spirals that are going to happen in this game. You're going to see guys that have a good head on their shoulders. Now, do they make mistakes? Yes. I think of Matt Bush, the shortstop from like 2005 or something like that, first overall pick. He was a kid out of high school. The Padres made a mistake there. That guy obviously didn't carry himself the right way. So that's a perfect example. He didn't pan out. Other guys are going to pan out. So is there anything else, Adam, you want to leave with before we roll out?
No, man, I think we covered a lot of good stuff today.
Yeah, guys. So hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Please do that 5-star review, like and share this podcast. And until next time, we'll see you guys later.